In the wake of the Franco-Prussian War, the city of Paris found itself in turmoil. The defeat by the Prussian forces left the city vulnerable, and discontent arose among Parisians. This discontent led to one of the most significant events in the French history, the Paris Commune. In this video, we will argue that the Paris Commune's short lifespan and eventual downfall was led by the lack of ideological cohesion among its factions, an unrevolutionary financial management, and the reliance on an informal militia. But before tapping into the reasons behind the downfall of the Commune, let us summarize the key events that have taken place before and during its existence. The roots of the Paris Commune can be traced back to the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. At the Battle of Sedan in September, Napoleon III was captured by German troops, leading to the collapse of France's Second Empire. A lengthy German siege in Paris followed this humiliating defeat, and the citizens of Paris were reduced to eating zoo animals, cats, dogs, and rats to survive. The remaining government officials established the Third Republic. They convened the National Assembly as the new legislative body and elected Adolphe Thiers as its leader. Since Paris was in a state of instability, the palace at Versailles was chosen as the government's headquarters. During the siege of Paris, the city was defended by the local National Guard instead of the French army. When the Versailles government tried to abolish the National Guard and seize the cannons scattered across the working-class neighborhoods in March 1871, the troops were confronted by a strong resistance in Montmartre, which sparked a rebellion. The resistance at Montmartre became a pivotal moment. Parisians refused to surrender their cannons to government troops, and this defiance led to the proclamation of the Paris Commune on 28th of March 1871. The Paris Commune initiated a wave of progressive reforms, including labor rights and the separation of church and state. However, internal divisions plagued the Commune, and its methods turned increasingly violent. The Bloody Week at the end of May marked the climax of the conflict between the communards and the Versailles government. Government forces launched a brutal assault on the city of Paris. The streets were painted red with the blood of the communards and the civilians. As the dust settled, Paris was in ruins. Thousands were dead and many more were imprisoned. The Paris Commune had been crushed. Now, going back to the topic of this video, let's dive deep into the reasons behind the short-lived nature of the Commune. Let's start with the political reasons. The Commune's brief existence can be attributed to its leaders' ideological divisions, notably between the Jacobins, influenced by Blanqui, and the Internationalists following thinkers like Proudhon and Bakunin. There were even further divisions among these broad factions, and this lack of formulated ideology hindered the unity of the Commune, which was worsened by Augusto Blanqui's imprisonment, depriving the movement of a strong leader. Karl Marx followed the happenings of the Paris Commune closely, and during the second address of General Council of the International Working Men's Association in September 1870, he advised the French working class not to attempt to overthrow the Republic, but to utilize the Republican period to build a strong class organization. This council underscored the necessity of building strength within the working class. However, the disunity between the ideological factions of the Commune prevented the realization of such strong class organization. Especially after the elections of April, the divisions became more prominent. Blanquist Jacobins demanded the institution of a dictatorship led by a committee of public safety similar to French Revolution. On the other hand, Proudhonist internationalists pushed for the continuation of the democratic process. However, Samuel Bernstein claims that both factions failed to offer realistic solutions. Jacobins overlooked the need for the Commune to develop its unique methods of resistance, while Proudhonists did not foresee that lengthy debates on fundamental issues would paralyze the striking power of the Commune. Ultimately, the Commune's inability to reconcile ideological differences, accompanied by the lack of leadership and strategic clarity, contributed to Paris Commune's short lifespan.
And now, we will examine the economic reasons behind the downfall of the Paris Commune. Although the Paris Commune was such a promising revolution, it was not an everlasting one. In the existence of the Commune, which ended in a short-term downfall, we must also examine their financial management and economic problems. Since the war between France and Prussia ended with a bad defeat for France, Paris was already in a poor economic condition before the Paris Commune was established. However, Some events that took place during the establishment of the Commune and subsequent policies made their economic situation worse, such as losing so many people during the fight against soldiers, not having legal recognition, and the attitude towards the Bank of France. In Friedrich Engels' introduction to Marx's work on the Paris Commune, he points out a significant oversight in the economic strategy of the Commune. Engels emphasizes that one of the worst mistakes was the Commune's decision not to seize the Bank of France. He argues that this was a critical error, as control over the bank would have been immensely valuable. He suggests that having the bank under the Commune's authority would have been more impactful than holding 10,000 hostages. Engels believed that the possession of the Bank of France would have altered the power dynamics significantly. It would have applied serious pressure on the French bourgeoisie to advocate for peace negotiations with the Commune. By controlling such a crucial economic institution, the Commune could have had considerable influence, both domestically and internationally, enhancing its position in the conflict with the Versailles government. To sum up, in addition to their ideological problems, the Commune's non-revolutionary economic management has also played a significant role in the short-lived existence of the Commune.
In addition to the perspectives discussed so far, the Paris Commune's defense has also contributed to its short-lived nature. The militia operations were ineffective because of the reliance on informal militia, and the troops of the Versailles government could not be withstood for long, leading to the downfall of the Commune. First of all, it would be right to mention Prosper Olivier Lesegue. As he mentioned his history of Paris Commune of 1871, he was a primary witness to the conflicts. He examines in detail the military operations, street battles, and defense strategies of the Commune. In particular, he vividly describes the military dynamics of the Commune, describing how barricade battles and house-to-house fighting took place. Barricades are one of the most distinctive military features of Paris Commune. The rebels used stones, cart, furniture, and other found materials to build barricades to block narrow streets and passages. These barricades were used to slow the advance of the French government's army and gain a defensive position. At the same time, artillery was also very effective inside the barricades. These cannons were used to defend against French government's army, but also counterattacks by government forces on controlled areas. Behind the barricades, house-to-house battles broke out on the streets of the Commune. House-to-house battles between civilian buildings took place frequently by firing through the windows and the doors of houses. The rebels provided defense against the soldiers entering the streets. This tactic made it difficult for the invaders to advance and gave them the chance to retake the occupied territories. While the Commune was attacked by Adolphe Thiers, MacMahon, and perhaps the most importantly, Jean-Ernest Boulanger, the Commune side has no specific, distinct commander, although there were representatives, such as Louis Michel. This did not make them more than representatives. Thirdly, Commune put a serious resistance, but the guerrilla-like defense had to succumb to the French government's quantitative and logistical advances.
To conclude, the Paris Commune stands as a pivotal chapter in history. Its brief but impactful existence was marked by the pursuit of progressive ideals in the middle of political turmoil, economic challenges, and military resistance. The Commune's downfall can be attributed to several factors. Politically, ideological divisions fractured its unity, preventing the emergence of cohesive leadership and strategic clarity. Economically, the failure to seize crucial institutions like the Bank of France weakened its financial position. And militarily, despite the efforts of the communards, its decentralized command structure and the reliance on the informal militia proved insufficient against the organized troops of the Versailles government. Yet, despite its brief existence and ultimate defeat, the Paris Commune remains as a symbol of resistance and revolution, a testament to the enduring struggle for freedom and equality.